Hi, I'm Nicole from Liberty Park Music, and I've repeatedly come across a few common questions related to learning music theory, so I wanted to make a quick video addressing some of these. In this video, I'll cover the question, what is the difference in meaning between the 6 and figured bass symbols and the 6 and pop chord symbols? I'll start by defining these two things and then I'll compare and contrast them. I don't have time for the long explanation. Can you summarize now? In short, figured bass 6 means that the chord you play there should contain a sixth and, implied, a third above the bass note, which doesn't necessarily have to be the chord's root. So if we say C major 6 in a classical context, we generally mean C but with E as the bass. So E, G, and C stacked. Pop chord 6 means that the chord you play there should contain a sixth and, implied, a third and a fifth above the root of the chord, which doesn't necessarily have to be the chord's bass, but often is. So if we say C major 6 in a pop chord context, we probably mean C, E, G, and A stacked with C on the bottom. To review the difference between root and bass, check out our Q&A video on the differences between chord roots and basses. Now for a more thorough explanation of the two languages. What does the 6 in figured bass numbers mean? So why do we sometimes see a 6 under a chord or note in classical music? How does figured bass even work? Well, let's take a minute to dive into how figured bass works. This system actually originated as a sort of lead sheet language for Baroque period musicians in the 1600s and 1700s. Here's a short example of a piece by J.S. Bach where the keyboard player gets the bass line and the numbers. The smaller note heads are the pitches that the figured bass asks the player to include in the right-hand chords. They definitely don't need to be in a specific octave, so the player can rearrange them as they wish, although performance practice usually says the keyboardist shouldn't play higher notes than the soloist at the same time. The way figured bass works is that you measure the interval distance between the bass note and each pitch above it, but not counting extra octaves, duplicate notes in thicker textures, and so on. So let's look at a chord that's in root position first. Taking C as the bass, what's the difference between the C and the G? Yes, it's a fifth. Now, what's the difference between C and E? Yes, it's a third. So our figured bass is 5-3. So a root position triad would be labeled 5-3 in figured bass notation. Actually, root position triads don't even need to be labeled with a figured bass number because root position was so common that musicians would assume they had to play root position if no number was given in their charts. Now let's figure out what a first inversion triad's figured bass would be. Measuring the distance between E and C and then between E and G, what numbers do you get? Yes, you should have gotten 6 and 3. So 6-3 signifies first inversion. Often you'll see this shortened to a simple 6 under the chord. Back in the Baroque days, when you had to hand copy most things, people would find shorthand ways to write just about anything they could. With second inversion, the notes are stacked a fourth and a sixth above the bass, giving us 6-4. Now, here are all three possible positions for the C major triad along with their figured bass symbols. The first inversion has the abbreviated 6 figure. Now, when we are analyzing chords, we'll usually place figured bass numbers alongside Roman numerals that show which scale degree, or placement within the overall key, is the root. So these are the contexts in which you'll see 6 as a figured bass symbol. Now let's look at pop chords. What does the 6 and pop chord symbols mean? In modern music that's not strictly classical, the 6th chord means something pretty different. If you see something like C6 above a chord or even C maj 6, you won't be playing a C chord in first inversion. You'll be playing a C major, usually assumed to be major, triad with an added sixth above the root, which would be A, assuming a major sixth, if your root is C. This was traditionally, and in classical music is still today, called an added sixth chord or a triad with added sixth. This usage actually dates back to Jean-Philippe Rameau in the 18th century, but tends to more frequently happen in pop music today. It is not common to designate chord inversions in popular music, and when they are designated, that happens with slash notation. So like, a first inversion C chord would be notated C/E. Thus, to say sixth chord in popular music is a short way of referring to an added sixth chord. This can also happen with minor triads with a major sixth over them, and in such a case you'd call the chord a minor sixth chord or minor major sixth chord. Because we don't generally use Roman numeral figured bass analysis in pop music, because it generally doesn't use the language of directional functional tonality that Roman numeral usage assumes, we don't really mind that the 6-5-3 figures we'd measure above the bottom note would imply a first inversion seventh chord, but the chord isn't actually working that way. Do you have any related questions or other music theory topics you'd like to ask about? If so, leave a comment and let us know. Thank you for watching this Liberty Park music lesson. If you enjoyed this video and learned something, please like and share it. If you want to learn more on this or any other music theory related topics, visit libertyparkmusic.com, which has full music theory courses from beginner to advanced levels. Our courses are all online and available 24/7 for you to stream.